Is that?
This is. Okay, guys, we're gonna get started. Apologies for starting late. And we are gonna go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome everyone to our May 2025 Executive Committee meeting. My name is Jessica Chiat and I'm Chair of the Board and pleased to call the meeting to order. Again, apologies for being late this evening. I want to do a few mea culpa. One is we're late because we were welcoming our newest members of the board and we're so happy to be joined by several who are able to stay this evening. The other is that I was traveling last week for work and went right into a long weekend and I totally failed to invite anybody to join us for this meeting with our new members. So that was totally on me and my apologies for that. I'm delighted that some people were able to trickle in early or did trickle in early and were able and more flexible. But that was really an oversight on my part and so thank you all and I appreciate your interest. And we are delighted to have our new members. And why don't you guys just introduce yourself briefly? We'll have lots more time in the weeks and months ahead, including a social coming up this summer where people will get some time with you, but take your thing.
Yeah, sure. My name is Erin Hoffman.
Oh, just sorry, where you live and you know, I don't know, just something you'd like to share about yourself.
Sure. I have 3 kids at elementary age and in the health kitchen area. I'm very excited to be here to get to know all of you and to build on the great work that you are already doing.
Hey everybody, Brendan McGrath. I've been in Chelsea for about 2 years now. No kids, but I've got a 4-year-old husky. And see, I work in City Bank. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. Oh,
Oh, you better be careful, Jess.
Yeah.
You are.
Sure, we have a correspondent already. I'm Ryan Sloan, in Chelsea, working technology. Really nice to meet you all.
And we have 2 Googlers on opposite ends of the table here, so you guys can also great. And we have, as you probably saw leaving, we have several other, we have 7 new members in total. Not everyone was able to join tonight's orientation or beginnings of that conversation. So again, for all of the board members, existing longer board members will look to facilitate opportunities. And this is really a tremendous brain trust that you have here in leadership. And so, you know, on behalf of them, I would say feel free to reach out to any of us with questions. Sorry, our hybrid meeting policy, we continue to adopt a hybrid meeting policy with members of the public and press invited to join remotely. Full board members are expected to attend this meeting in person unless you have a disability and or an extraordinary circumstance as defined by New York State Open Meetings Law. Committee members, and members of the public are still able to participate virtually, and board members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. We encourage members of the public to join virtually and our policy can be found on our website. We are streaming this meeting live on our YouTube channel and a transcript is being recorded. It will live on our YouTube and be accessible to the public. For tonight, we have, I believe, 3 items and we anticipate 1 new business item. So we'll dive right into it. The first is the Clinton Hills Kitchen Land Use Committee draft scope of work for Aviner. I imagine that JD is taking it and joining us. So JD, we'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Jessica. Can I be heard?
We don't hear you. 1 second.
1 second, JD, we don't hear you.
While he's doing that, just especially for the
Best thing that ever happened to JD.
especially for the new members, all of our, ahead of time, we send around a Dropbox link. All of our materials are included in the Dropbox. And so the background materials and the draft that JD is referencing can all be found in the Dropbox.
Can you try again, JD?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Hi.
Okay, thank you. This is on behalf of Paul and myself and the Clinton Hills Kitchen Land Use Committee. This is folks are seeking a license to develop a gaming facility at what we call the Silverstein site, which is 41st Street, 11th, Galvin Avenue, vaguely. So this is very odd. And Jesse can explain better than I what happened with the Gaming Commission, where we were not informed in time to have a public meeting at the Land Use Committee. Nevertheless, the Land Use Committee decided to draft a letter in response to the draft scope, and that's what we have before us tonight. You'll have a complete letter for the full board to vote on, but Paul, as suggested, I think we need to vote on it tonight. This is just a response to the draft scope of work. So Jesse, do you want to explain what happened and why we could not have a
Sure.
public hearing at the committee?
Right, so, unbeknownst to us, the State Gaming Commission has become the lead agency for the 3 Manhattan proposals, possible proposals for a gaming facility that were not already requiring some type of environmental review. So Western Rail Yards was having their own, so the State Gaming Agency does not need to be the lead agency. But the Aviner, which is in our district, the Times Square application, and then the one on the East River, did not have any type of environmental review process. The state decided that all of these 3 things in the actual proposal, component of the actual proposal, triggered the need for an environmental review. So the first step is always a draft scope, right? The scope of the project. That's followed by a final scope and then a draft EIS. So this is it's kind of a unique situation for all parties involved. I will include, I believe it is also very unique for the Gaming Commission, because I don't think they have any experience in doing this. Because of what they went off and did is that when they made issued notice, they did not issue notice to us, which is normally what's city environmental review process is like. They're running it off of state, which I guess doesn't technically require them to contact the community board, which is something we might want to talk to our state electeds about for future legislation. But so when we found out about it, which we did hear about it through word of mouth, thanks to Paul, I quickly contacted them, clarified that we never received notice, and it's in 10 days out, and so it's only a 30-day notice comment period, and so fortunately, we were able to get it, like JD said, onto the agenda, at least as an initial discussion. Normally, we would have had the applicant come and present, as they normally have done in the past for environmental review. So we're gonna be thinking about that for June, at this point, but fortunately, we contacted our elected officials very quickly and raised the issue, and they were able to get the comment period extended for a week. Which was helpful, but not really the issue for us. It was really about the hearing. So the public hearing was actually, the original public hearing was last week, which wouldn't have allowed any of us to say anything. I was gonna show up and just basically complain, and no one told us anything. It'd be really annoying to them, and that wasn't really the point of the hearing. But now, because they also created a second hearing, which will be on Thursday, which that gave us a little more time to actually put together a real response to the draft scope and put in material that we want them to study, an issue we want them to review. And so the reason why we're doing this tonight really is because we want to be able to go and give testimony and say that some sort of committee has reviewed this. Okay, I'll finish and Paul can take over. And so that's the purpose, so.
Okay, Jesse, thank you. And so very quickly, the committee jumped in and tried as quickly as possible to put a letter together. And we asked Christine from the Transportation Committee, Leslie and Marty from WPE to add their input. And certainly Paul and Rachel and Kevin and Ted and Chris LeBron all added stuff. So this is a draft that we could vote on tonight, and we'll have a complete draft for the full board.
I'd like to add that part of the reason we want to come out of exec is because we do need a full letter from full board, because the comment period didn't get extended. It's still June 5th.
No, it did.
It did to what though?
The 12th.
June 12th. So we won't have time for it to come through Hell's Kitchen Land Use to then come to full board. So we're asking executive committee to approve this letter so that it can go to full board for a full vote, so it can be submitted on June 12th. That's great that we don't have to submit it on the day after full board, JD.
That's right.
And,
Yeah.
and I also will repeat JD's praise of all the various people, because this letter that got whipped together, the reason it's only 14 pages and not 28 pages is because we didn't have a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I just want to say
So
one,
it's coming to exact, so
thank
that we
you,
can provide
Paul.
that.
One,
Everyone took.
one thing to-
Sorry.
one thing to Marty and Christine and Leslie, there may be edits. I know it may not be exactly what you wanted, but we had to put it in a certain form. So please tell us if you
dare you.
need editing.
Any comments on the letter?
Just that they can do more edits after we adopt to get the
Yes.
technical stuff.
Of course. Any comments on?
I have one comment.
Yes.
JD, awesome job. JD, it was really tight for you. You did great with all the points, at least from WPE's point of view, right? It was great. Thank you.
Great.
I think
Okay.
you can
Yeah, we do
repeat
need to
that.
take a vote.
Is this being recorded?
Yes, it's been recorded.
I'd like to move
Are you-
the letter on the draft scope of work.
Great, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Christine, all in favor? Great, any opposed? Okay. All right.
You're becoming a good cook, JD. Don't have video on.
Great.
Wow.
Okay, we'll move to our second topic, which also is a bit of a, not a timing issue, it's a.
It is, yeah, it is both. So, this is a outdoor dining sidewalk cafe on West 27th Street that was actually voted on at the BLP committee meeting. However, subsequent to that, we got some new information relevant to the application, so I thought it should come back to this committee. The BLP committee voted to recommend denial of the sidewalk cafe because it is located immediately opposite a curb cut. And there's actually a rule that says if you have a curb cut, you need 5-foot clearance on either side to have a sidewalk cafe. So on its face, the rules seem to apply and bar this. So on that basis, and I would say that basis alone, the committee voted to deny it. After that, Christine was in contact with DOT, who told her that despite the wording of the rule, DOT's position was if the curb cut is not active, in other words, actually being used by cars in the garage, then it is not considered an obstruction and the rule doesn't apply. So this is essentially a fallow curb cut because there's no garage there anymore. So I think if the BLP committee had heard this, we would have voted the other way and recommended approval because the only basis was our different understanding of the rule, which has been since clarified. So I guess what I would suggest is someone make a motion to recommend.
Let me just make a comment. The thing which is absolutely sounds absurd is that it's a curb cut, so the whole thing is slanted. And therefore the cafe is going to be installed on the slanted part. So we thought, oh, that doesn't make any sense, you know, so, but DOT says it's fine with me.
So you're saying approve the.
Recommend,
Yes.
a motion from this committee to recommend.
I would like to make the motion, but make sure we include the word fallow, because that's a great. I fallow curb cut it is. I don't support that.
Second.
I looked at the document online
Yeah,
and had trouble determining what it was for, where the sidewalk. There was no check boxes for sidewalk or anything that I saw. But I now understand it's sidewalk, it's not roadbed.
correct.
Right.
And it's very small, it's the retail
Very
is
small.
6.
And it's fallow.
Yeah,
And it's
fallow.
But it's slanted.
So there is no garage at that location.
No, it used
It was a former garage that's
the
become a
former
restaurant.
garage, and then the cafe has a garage door, but then the whole sidewalk, you know,
One of those things.
so second.
Who, sorry, who will make the motion?
I did.
Okay, Paul, seconded, all in favor? Right, great, any opposed?
JD?
He's not voting.
Can you raise your hand if you're?
I don't think he's voting. I'm not voting. He's not voting.
Okay.
I'm
All,
voting.
right, I don't wanna speak for him, so.
I don't believe
any
I can
opposed?
vote.
Okay, President Arnold, you're not saying anything. Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna actually, Roberta is presenting on item number 3, but is finishing up a work conflict, so Leslie, if it's okay, we'll go to your item of new, and Marty,
Sure.
your item of new business.
And the reason why this is coming to, everyone's excited.
It's also for
Oh,
that.
thanks. Yeah, it just went in today, into the Dropbox. Everyone's all excited. Guess what this is from WPE?
Sure.
Another letter for shore power. The reason why we're,
The greatest number of footnotes ever seen, no letter.
Oh, my God.
I know. That was actually a request from Senator Holm Siegel's office to do all those footnotes. I'll tell you. So what happened was. This is another, the reason why it's so quick and they want to get it done now, Senator Holm Siegel and Assemblymember Rosenthal wrote a bill trying to move up the date for shore power. And they're trying to get it in under the wire of this, legislative, session, at least presented. So what they asked, last week is if we could write a letter of support, and we figured with Jesse and Jessica, that obviously would be no problem, since we're on the record many times with this. And they wanted, though, the specific letter to say that we support this bill and the reasons why, which we do, and we really just mostly lifted it from past letters. But they also suggested, and we thought it was a good idea, to attach all the letters that we have written in the past to show a pattern of this, because they might be getting some pushback by some electeds, not in our district, but some elected saying, wait, why isn't this a city issue? Why is it a state issue? And want to go on record why we thought the timing would be.
Another question.
Kristen?
So what does the bill say?
Hold on,
It's a.
great question. It's moving up shore power for 2029.
What?
2028, 2029.
Before, right?
Before, so right now, it was,
Yes,
EDC said they had a date.
right.
They pulled the date back, now there's no date, and so they're trying to kind of force their
Bring
hand
it
by
back
putting the
to
date
29.
in.
Right.
Putting from the state level to force the city.
To comply, like they do, you know.
What
Yeah.
would be the, would a precinct not be able to get licensed or like a?
Sorry?
What's the penalty?
What's the penalty if we're not, if it's not there by 2029? Like who's,
It's not the cruise line.
it's not the cruise line, it's
The city
the
of-
city of New York.
No, the cruise line is all, if you.
But the city of New York would not be allowed to have host cruise ships in the terminals anymore without. Like what's the stick? on
He's
this?
asking what's the.
Like, what's the
stick?
penalty, what's the
Yeah.
date gonna be
Yeah,
the city?
it's-
I mean, I don't think that's been determined, a penalty, like a fine, you mean, or something?
Yeah, why is that? Yeah, I don't know what the,
I
Yeah,
think your penalty is a really interesting one.
I don't
We'll
think-
never see it.
okay.
yeah, I mean, there's no, I mean, as I think we discussed many times, that this isn't a cruise problem, it's specifically a city problem,
The
not,
cruise ships are equipped.
they're equipped.
It's not.
It's in the letters.
No, but he's asking what.
No, I'm saying,
Let's
yeah,
say
I understand how
they
that's
don't
the city.
do it. They
Yeah, I
don't do it.
I don't think the governor has decided what the pound,
Yeah.
the bill hasn't been, when the
I
bill was passed.
thought it was a forward towards the cruise line, I understand this.
Right.
No, so telling the city that they have to get the, back together,
Yeah.
we're not in the turn. Yeah, okay, got
I'm making the motion.
Oh, more questions?
No, can you add Tony to your CCC list?
He's not signed his district.
Yeah, I know it's not a but it's adjacent and he's been involved in a lot of these discussions, so I would rather try to add Tony as well.
Sure, that was all.
CCC.
That was a little, yeah, sure, you
It's a
can.
little touchy.
No, we'll add him, yes.
And,
On the letter?
Jesse, could you just rename the links so they make sense as opposed to like this long thing?
What length?
I just like, we can.
In all the footnotes.
Yeah, yeah.
The title,
That's okay.
letter number 1, letter. I
Yeah,
can do
whatever,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so we had a motion from Christina and a second from Candace, all in favor?
All in favor?
Any opposed? Yes, Maria? No, okay, in favor. Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
great, thank you,
Excellent.
thank you for moving on
Good
that.
letter.
Thank you.
Okay, Roberta's just joined us, but we're gonna do, we have one other new item, new business item, so Jesse, I'll try to do.
Yeah, I literally just got this, so I apologize. So, we're going through the budget process right now. The city's going through the budget process right now, and so June 12th is the Committee on Government Operations. And the focus is community boards and oversight and support. So there's a bunch of different pieces of legislation that are being proposed. I don't really have much to say about any of them. One is about mandating that the borough president require members to do EEO training, which we already know is becoming an issue that more and more it is required, expecting members to be up to date with their EEO, which I think is fine, and that's the borough president's responsibility to get it done. There's another one about making the bylaws more accessible. I don't think that's an issue at all. I know just a general oversight, so we'll probably have a number of board member DMs probably coming down to, say that we basically need more funding for X, Y, and Z. I'm supporting that, we'll work on that. The one thing I want to highlight, which I don't think has any actual political reality, but that's what I said about it when it was introduced last year in November, was a term limits on district managers. Yeah, so I don't have to go ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
So, there was a piece of legislation introduced, was by a city council member, I believe in Queens, I'm not 100% sure, I have to track it down. Which stated basically term limits for district managers, which makes no sense because we're employees and we're.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but so I didn't think about it much, I didn't care about it, but it is now getting its own hearing, part of this larger group. And again, there's no one listed on this bill besides the council member, so I'm not really that kind of worried about it yet. But I am like one more step worried about it, because why is it getting a hearing about it? And who's gonna show up to say this is what it should be? And I'm assuming there's like lawsuits waiting to happen about it, but those are all assumptions. So I guess what all I'm asking is basically because it does directly involve me, like, I don't know technically, I don't know what the conflict is. But I just wanna highlight this to you all, and if you all have an opinion about this, and someone wants to write something, yeah.
Yeah.
Then
We have a motion that
Yeah.
this committee opposes the term limits on district managers. We write a letter to that effect, and some of us can therefore go and testify to that.
The
effect.
we write the letter is the question.
I'll write it, I'll write it.
He's going to write the letter.
All right.
Okay, good. That's the good thing.
So is that someone?
It's so dumb.
Yes,
It's
it is June 12th.
Did you ask, I'm
It's-
sorry, did you ask Eric or anyone about it?
I haven't asked Eric, Eric's not on it, I don't think, I asked Gail, because Gail sits on the committee. I actually asked Gail's chief of staff, and so she's gonna, make sure that Gail's aware. I have no doubt in our local elected official support or opposition to this. But it's just very bizarre. And it also puts my employment in the realm of the borough president's office, not you guys. So that's also bizarre. So it's just,
Who's the council member who?
Williams,
There must be something going on.
I think it's also-
again,
Somebody doesn't like it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, there's something.
So therefore, let me find the time, sorry.
Yeah, it's not bizarre to me that when you can get a hearing, and so that's just another little step of legitimacy to me, but this speaks to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make we make
Yeah.
a motion. You made a
I
motion.
made the
Yeah.
motion.
Second,
Thank you.
Jesse's
Second, all in favor?
and Jesse's
Maria?
writing.
Yeah,
I oppose.
Depends how many snacks you
Thank
take.
I oppose. Okay,
So this
Thank
is
you.
such a stupid
That is-
thing.
And that's,
Okay, we're,
sorry,
Yeah.
that's council member.
Williams.
That's not Tasha Williams, that's.
I believe so,
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna welcome Roberta. Roberta, can you hear us?
Okay.
Great, hi. We kind of.
Yes, I can-
On the agenda, but, Roberta is gonna, has been participating in some of the discussions and the materials related to the mayor's charter revision commission, and is gonna give an update in the Dropbox just this evening. We added a summary that she provided, and so I don't know if there are copies of that, but you can walk us through, Roberta. And just kind of orient people, we haven't talked about this at length about the commission.
So I don't know if it is useful. I don't know if you have the like little overview of questions that were asked in the initial preliminary report in front of you, but if you would like, you could also put them on the screen. But I just too long don't read summary is the mayor has put together a charter revision commission. It is seeking to make recommendations. Primarily, the purpose was around housing and land use and sort of building on the conversations that were had during City of Yes to see, are there impediments in the charter to ultimately doing some of the housing and land use objectives that communities actually do want to see more of, and identifying those and moving potentially moving those recommendations onto the ballot in November. The Charter Commission, I believe, started at the end or the beginning of this year or the end of last year, and then came out with a preliminary report a couple of weeks ago, and is set to make final recommendations over the course of this summer. There is one input session following this report in every borough, and Manhattan's happens to be on July 7th in Harlem at 5 p.m. So there is the opportunity both for the community board, but also for individuals to testify on this and other topics that might be relevant. I did put together a list of effectively questions that the Charter Commission is looking at. So the way that the preliminary report works is, in addition to providing background, it also just had a bunch of preliminary areas of exploration for the Charter Revision Commission to explore. And so I wanted to highlight these because these are the types of questions that they will be seeking to answer. So I assume we want to focus on the housing specific ones because I think that those are going to be the most relevant, but I would just call out that there are some electoral, some contracting and nonprofit questions, as well as some climate questions that have touched on issues that we have focused on the board. I will call it specifically out the ability, increasing our ability to cite electric vehicle charging stations as one of those things that are ultimately up for are questions that are being asked by the Charter Revision Commission. So I did just on housing. I think we could just go very quickly, and you can see the questions that are sort of outlined in the report. The housing section focuses on reducing process costs or costs associated with the land use review process, whether that be ULURP or another similar process. And for the types of projects that we, when I say we, I mean the proverbial we, not necessarily you or I or anybody in particular, would like to see they're primarily focused on either small projects, so projects that are not getting the types of ULURPs that a lot of the larger projects in this district tend to receive. So we're talking like a 6 or 8 unit building that you might not want to bring forward an entire land use action and go through the entire review process for that. And then for certain affordable housing. There are also questions related to comprehensive planning and fair housing. So we have questions that are, one, should the city council adopt a fair housing framework? And then should the Charter Revision Commission be able to, give that teeth and say, hey, community district, whatever, you're not meeting your housing targets. Perhaps we can have a streamlined process for districts that are not ultimately meeting their housing targets. So those types of questions are ones that are going to be dealt with before the commission. And then the final sort of housing leg is the leveraging of public land. So there's the opportunity to sort of streamline the land disposition process to increase the ability to produce housing. But I think this is focused specifically on utilizing city-owned land for affordable housing, as well as other beneficial uses that support residential, like parks, schools, access and easements, and other such things. So I guess I wanted to bring all of these questions to you, and admittedly, it's like 4 pages of just text, because there may be questions that either the board has previously opined on or that the board would like to opine on based on its previous experiences, and may decide that it is appropriate to opine for the before the commission. And so I just wanted to highlight that. I'm happy to focus on any of the things that I wrote or answer any questions. I also would refer you to the preliminary report for which I took all of these sort of questions and attempted to distill them so that people could get a better idea of what the commission would actually discuss.
And Roberta, can you just thank you for that and for attending to this process and the material that's been produced. Can you just remind us of the timing and when, if we were to offer the board's perspective when we need to do that by.
So the comment period is ongoing. The Manhattan public input session is July 7th. I don't know if the Charter Revision Commission has a specific date by which it is ultimately like ceasing collecting testimony, but I do know that it is focusing on trying to get testimony within that sort of time frame. So it is ultimately ideal to have the testimony available for that early July date, with the understanding that there may be some ability to obtain testimony afterwards, or to offer testimony afterwards rather, but that ultimately that's not presently guaranteed. I can certainly inquire with people who are working on the commission and see if there is the ability to offer testimony at a later point in time, but I think that the later we go, the riskier it becomes to offer that testimony.
Sure, and just to say it back, so if we wanted to have something approved by July 7th, it could be that committees take these relevant sections to their June meetings and come back, and that we bring this back to exec in June, to be approved. To be approved in advance of the July, recognizing we don't have full board until July 23rd in July, but we could bring it back to exec. I'm seeing nods, so it sounds like that.
Just to be clear, are they taking written testimony or are they accepting it?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. Paul, you have a question?
Yeah, I know that in past charter revisions, they've done a series of public meetings and public hearings, and then it goes on the ballot, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is before that, this is.
Yeah, but this is before, this is
before the
that
hearing.
what goes on the ballot.
But the hearings are usually before.
Isn't it for the November, is this for the November ballot?
This would be for the November ballot,
Yeah.
but they're still in this preliminary phase. So they put out the preliminary things they'd like to consider, and then over the summer they are going to consider them in part with input from members of the public, including but not limited to community boards and members of the community.
Can I just add a little context to it? Well, this office did receive a phone call from the city council, land use division, asking whether we were gonna be involved in this, because they are very concerned. I think the changes to ULERP is something that they're keeping an eye on. They have their own process, they're holding their own meetings, it's a little confusing. They have shown up at the wrong one, and I think you're talking to the city.
They're doing a city charter review also.
Yeah, they're doing some charter review also, but at the end of the day, their recommendation is not the one that ends up on the ballot. And so, but I do think that is, they are concerned, and I think it was targeted outreach to us, knowing that our experience with land use, our experience with affordable housing and that kind of thing, and wanted to make sure that we were engaged. Aware and engaged about what is being suggested and changes to the land use process.
Joe and Melissa.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. Roberta, do you have anything, what is a small scale project? Is there any definition in this so far, what that means?
At various points in the report, I think it points to something under 6 units or 8 units. So, but I think that that's a reasonable like point of feedback. Like, what is a small project, and is this, is there a certain project threshold or cutoff that would be appropriate? I think I mentioned this, but I think that the purpose of that is for places that are either lower rise or places where those types of projects ultimately make a great deal of sense, rather than engaging in a larger scale upzoning, because ultimately the land is much less valuable and the surrounding infrastructure is less likely to support the larger projects that I think this board is very familiar with at this point. So I would flag that. If you read the report, it does seem to be speaking about those types of projects, but it might be worth, trying to get layout, is this relevant to our district? And if so, what parameters would you want to see around such a thing if you would like to see any changes at all?
The next question is about public land. One of the main functions of ULERP is the disposition of public land. And this says the public land goes for affordable housing. It's not gonna go through the same process. And that's kind of shocking, because public land can take so many different forms as to what the project actually becomes. So I really feel like this is the mayor seeking to take away the public review in the name of affordable housing.
Okay.
Alright, no, I'm just trying to put it out there, and then the last thing is, if something's disposed of to an HDFC, I have seen for-profit developers set up HDFCs all the time to get a tax exemption. So why would we ever say if somebody's disposed of to that entity just for the tax exemption purpose, real estate tax exemption purposes? That means, again, going around the full public review. That's a kind of here's a way to make a deal to get something not to be reviewed. What are your thoughts on that?
mean, I think all of these are important questions and ones that I hope are taken up. There are just a couple of elements that I would note, and I would very much encourage reading the report. I did include like little annotations to the various areas where these recommendations or these questions are, so you could get a little bit more context than what I provided. But there is an interest not in taking away public review, but are there instances in which public review ought to be better, like more streamlined or easier? And the answer might be it should never be easier. It should never be more streamlined. But those are the questions that they are ultimately asking. And it is, I think, worthwhile to think about if there was to be a streamlined process, how do you preserve that public review? So that might be, one of the questions. Or two, should there be streamlined processes for any of these objectives? And the answer that the committees might come to very well could be no. But it's the questions that they want to be asking right now.
The chair, given our short time frame and our other agenda items that are very heavy, could I ask maybe we do some sort of like short-term task force of the committee chairs or some members to talk about this, because not every committee has time to spend on it.
But your committees, but you're the only one who knows what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
No,
Like it-
no, I would like to put it more than our committee to get some.
Well, I think what I would, I think hopefully in Roberta's,
No.
hopefully Roberta will continue to take a role in compiling and not just understanding what's being proposed, excuse me, but also working with each committee and chairs to get relevant feedback. And certainly, Roberta, I'm happy to help support you, and perhaps we can find others. But that, it would be helpful to know which committees feel this is relevant for their agenda. Obviously, some of these sections directly correspond and some don't. And Roberta also acknowledged that there are some things that maybe previously the board has taken a position on that are reflected here, and that some of our folks would
Or that are not reflected.
or that are not, and that we'd like to, and that's why I will come back to exec for that purpose. But I think certainly from the place of making sure historical positions are elevated and that we've been on the record for, would appreciate the perspective of those who might have been part of those discussions in years past. But so that's, I think Roberta will help coordinate and facilitate that to bring back an exec. If you're concerned about not having time on a given agenda, I think we can figure out how to deal with that. And make sure that feedback is reflected. I do wanna get just, if someone knows that they wanna have this on their committee agenda, if you would just raise your hand. So transportation, housing, and WPE. And land use, great, okay, so, thank you,
Wait, but sorry, I'm sorry, every committee is taking what we just believe is relevant, or we're actually gonna work this out?
No, we're taking the piece we think is relevant,
Okay.
and then there are other suggestions that we can send to other people, right?
Okay.
Like we do for Europe.
But if there are no gaps, which like on the years that we're voting, the voting.
I'm just gonna ask you the question.
Like, where does that
do you
fall?
foresee like elections, if there's something
Yeah.
about member deference?
so
how do
I
they
think
know?
we'll speak with Roberta, but ultimately this will come back to exec. I don't know that we necessarily have to have the perspective on everything that's here, if it's not exactly relevant to the work of the
Right.
board, and I think we have to be okay with that. We may have a position or be able to generate a position on, a perspective on that, but I think we also need to look at what's directly relevant to what the board's role is, and maybe we can come back with some.
Last time we engaged was about
board member term limits.
Yeah.
You know, which there was a number of resolutions that ended up on that ballot, which we didn't engage in. That was the one that obviously pertained, we thought was best thing, relatively less.
I was on that working group, so I just looked back, we had 8 items that we had recommended revisions to the charter.
What year was that?
18.
2019,
Wow.
so we started in 18.
Yeah.
Do you have another? comment?
No, that was it, about where those,
Yeah.
went through the cracks.
Yeah, well, I think we'll, I don't know that we need a working group, but I think we'll use exact to work through these things and the committees, the relevant committees. Roberta, any other comments or things you wanna raise?
I don't think so. Happy to, reach out and do encourage, the sort of reading of the sections of the report. The preliminary report is about 100 pages, but the actual individual sections are much smaller, and would just echo what Jessica said. I lined out all of the questions they were considering, but the board does not have to opine on any or all of these questions.
Is Kathy White stepping down from her job because this commission has been so difficult? I'm just kidding, don't answer that. Okay, thank you, Roberta, for backing this and bringing it today. We're gonna now move on to the chair report. So as we started the meeting, sorry, you asked.
No.
Okay, as we started the meeting, we have 7 new members, 5 joined us, this just prior to this for a beginning conversation about the functioning of the board. I encourage them to reach out to you. You may see new faces at your committee meetings, and obviously encourage you to be welcoming and engaging about the work of the board as people consider the right placements for them. And
So at the next meeting, the board, they are not voting yet on, when they show up at the next meeting.
the first board meeting is there in their capacity as a board member.
Yes, that they could vote.
So they will vote.
They
They
can,
count towards quorum because the people who wrote, who they replaced are not.
Okay.
So, and with that, the people who we are used to seeing around our table, who we know are rotated off, are not going to be there. So, we'll now begin that process of getting new members, preference forms. I intend to work with the co-chairs as I did last year to review, preferences both from them and what you feel is missing from your committees to make sure that we find good matches, and the right balance, et cetera. Just as we did sort of see that we have a much more representation from Chelsea this year than the typical split, I think, that we often see. Maybe it's closer to a split, the 2 people who weren't here today. But, we'll have to take all those factors. I know, Leslie, you kind of expressed some enthusiasm or excitement for people with kids, and there were a number of people who reflected that as part of their introductions earlier, and so I'm, hopefully we'll continue to balance out the representation of the board. Yes.
So, quick question. We talked about before having like a little membership page on our website that sort of like said, here's a person, here's who they are, their work they do, whatever, so people get an idea of the range of people.
So as you'll remember, it's a great suggestion, and it's one that the board engagement working group is considering and taking on. Obviously, they started their work and are in their work in a way that doesn't align neatly with new members having been appointed, but hopefully when we return from summer, for those who get that break, I know not everybody does, but that we will have some new materials and also just new ways to engage. And by the way, I feel like even for the people who've been with us a year, there's still opportunities to get to know them better, for them to get to know us, and so it can still be a benefit going forward. Just wanted to note that Bayview Construction went through its process related to ESD and got necessary approvals from ESD to begin moving forward on that project. This is the former women's prison. They are anticipated to start construction in 2026, so they are moving relatively quickly with a full build out in 2028, which is pretty. I know we've talked about this a bunch, as excited as we are, but really pretty exciting. And they have requested a meeting to talk about the early planning stages of the marshalling yards. And so hopefully we'll get that set up. And as Joe mentioned as part of his intro, perhaps at tail end of the last meeting, the ESD, as we've said before, has been really Empire State Development has been really willing to look at these sites and work collaboratively with us, which is really.
And I've asked them to start discussing the other state sites also. Kick that discussion off,
Like what,
the parole board and Hunter,
parole board on
Fourth Street.
Oh my God.
And those will be things that will be reflected in the housing plan, which I believe is going to pass in this month and can be used as a tool then. Wanted to mention Western Rail Yards. I'm sure some of you saw that the casino is not moving forward at Western Rail Yards. And so we are, I think while we never took a position on specifically on the casino. One of the, if you look at if you were to break out all of the comments and people who came to those hearings, the thing that was most represented were issues related to a casino. And so the fact that that is off the table, I think, again, while we did not take a specific position on it, is considered a win and intended, and given the concerns around the uses of the space related to a casino, like traffic and air, and some of those things are immediately likely to be addressed by the result of not having a casino there. That said, there are obviously a lot of things we still want to see from that site, and particularly as it relates to housing and more affordable housing. That was really the strong rationale we had in declining to approve the ULURP, was that we didn't see the delivery of that. We had expressed to our council member who's leading the negotiations together with the speaker's office that remains a priority, as do other things that were elevated in the proposal that we had concerns about related to, accident, the open space, shadows, light, air quality, traffic, etc. I believe the city council is taking a vote tomorrow on this.
Thursday. Oh, tomorrow,
Wednesday, I think.
tomorrow's 28th, you're correct, yes.
And so they are down to the wire on these negotiations. Eric Botcher is leading these again, as I said, with the speaker's office. We have tried to advocate as clearly as possible the things that we want to see from this project, and aside from all of the specific item, or I guess that's the point, in addition to all of the items, it's the specificity that we know that there needs to be real commitments, that it can't be things that later get renegotiated or not delivered because the wind blew from the southeast instead of the northwest, and that we need to really be clear that we expect Related to be able to deliver these things, or to deliver these things. Joe, I know you've been talking with the council member, as has JD and Paul, so if there's.
We have spent constant discussion since last Wednesday with city council member and city council land use staff. As of last Thursday, to my knowledge, the speaker has been managing these negotiations and Eric is participating, but the speaker is managing them. As of what time the meeting started? Meeting started at 6:15 or so, right? As of 6 o'clock tonight, there is no a commitment from Related for 25% affordability, as have been noted in the council's press release, in this press release. There is a discussion about a minimum and a maximum affordability. So that problem is that we're at not even 25% affordability. A number of items, highline and design, got settled today at a meeting with the speaker's office. However, the points that we laid out in our letter and in our position after that, once we were informed that the casino had withdrawn. Everyone should know that the Wing Resorts withdrew 2 weeks ago. So the idea that this was a function of our council members is not accurate. And I work with them, I enjoy them, but that was not an accurate statement. So we were here today and we literally don't know what the package of community benefits is. One thing that we did bring up in passing, Jessica, in that meeting, we're just gonna have a meeting Thursday. Wednesday at 4 o'clock or something, Jess goes into the airport in Tel Aviv, I was in my office, she was getting on a plane, and Eric was also leaving. So one thing we brought up, we said, in past, we had secured off-site housing commitments, if they cannot do on-site housing commitments. And one of those I was informed today has been agreed to by Related. It's 529 West 29th Street, we call Son of Manhattan Plaza. Those are Manhattan Plaza Section 8 vouchers that were transferred to a new building constructed between 10th and 11th. We requested that they made permanently affordable, they've agreed to that. However,
But that was affordable,
that it is permanently affordable in a deed restriction.
right?
Right, again, Christine,
That's-
this is window dressing, this is
Yeah.
not production, right? We did that, we used the Western Rail Yards, Rights Agreement Part
Right.
1. It stated that they were extending affordability on certain locations. The request this time is making permanency. It is not production.
Right.
So, I will say that
Was that in my prediction?
it is.
That's no new, no new, affordable. no new unit.
It's existing units that become permanently affordable.
So
That's
the
the good thing.
Production meaning no new unit.
Right.
It's just like a footnote of them.
Well, no, but no,
It changes their financial calculation.
it is it's a deed restriction, it's not extending section 8, it's a deed restriction, right? But however, considering the size of this use site, and the fact that as of tonight, they have not agreed to minimum of 25% affordability, and are still discussing back and forth what a minimum or maximum can be, I don't feel very confident that the speaker's office nor our council member is gonna deliver a major win here. And that's having dealt with it the entire weekend. I dealt with it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Can I ask you a
This
question?
is so sad.
It's so disgusting. Wait a minute. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna jump ahead a little bit and tell me if I'm premature.
Sure.
But when can we have a real serious discussion on the 2-bedroom unit, like on the family units? Cause they're gonna give up, envisioning. They're gonna give a bunch of studios and say they're giving, this is all the units, we're giving a whole bunch. Like, when can we get to the
I don't even
like
think we
family?
have, as of today,
We
we don't have a commitment
to
on
nothing, right?
anything beyond the offer of 400. They
The
increased it,
original offer, 300 up to.
they went from 324 to 400, a 75 unit increase.
This is.
But where does that
That was it.
conversation, that's what.
That
Eric's
conversation
office,
didn't
right?
take
The
place.
speaker's office is managing these negotiations at this point. That's what's happened.
And do you think they're going to vote no tomorrow?
No, I believe this, and at the same time, the issue of the pilots.
Right.
Here's the thing where it ties together, is that OMB is being difficult, not difficult, they want to preserve the city's benefit with the pilots. And the more they preserve the benefit, meaning the tax revenue being used for bonds to build
Right.
buffer and everything, that means there's less affordability. And the equation is as follows. The platform costs $1 billion. The lady came up with an idea to take $80 million of tax revenue and to bond that to create a lot more money to build that platform. To the degree that 80 million is available, that means there's more residential. To the degree there's more residential, means there's more affordable residential.
Yes.
And so we're in the middle of a discussion that none of us have any information about whatsoever. And I will say that, just when I talked about this, that we as a community would have done much better once the casino plan was withdrawn. There is no reason, there's no time need for this to happen by June 11th, which is the final day for Euler. Yeah,
Yeah, right now, it's
This-
done.
that was about the
So
casino.
what's the rush?
This could have started again, and we could have gone through a planning process in an expedited manner. Our council member chose not to do that. And there are consequences to those actions, and that's where we are today. And I don't know what to say here, except that I've been in the trenches on this one for about 2 weeks, and I cannot understand where we are. I've asked for response. I was told this afternoon that we will get something in writing tomorrow. I don't know. If that's gonna be very useful, considering they're gonna vote tomorrow.
It's crazy.
So here we are, expecting, this is, in my reading the initial document that we received two weeks ago, at this point, the one on the Friday, right? That was a document written by the related companies. So I don't know where we are.
But everyone's so blinded by like, no casino, everyone's like, win, like, there's other levels.
I would also just say, we did, we've had to be cautious, we have not taken, we did not offer, we have a letter that says a lot of it does, to Paul reminded me today of a letter that we, included with our deny. Had a lot of content and concerns and things to look at, but it also was not written to say, a deny unless says, unless you do the following things, and so. I do think we are slightly hamstrung, only slightly, but slightly hamstrung, I do, because we don't have that document that we could then say, these are all the things we asked for, you do these things and then we'll be happy.
But our council member informed us last week that he was voting against it. And
Understood.
then
Understood.
change his position the following day.
I get it.
So that to me is, that's his, that's not really not on us.
I get it, I'm just putting it
No,
out there that.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that, because we were told flat out that he was opposed to.
That's, you know, we can agree to disagree, but so that is where we are trying to.
I was just gonna say, I think, just to say, like, the major reason you're here is because of Related.
Yes.
Related did this, went ahead and proposed this, presented it, pulled the plug on it midstream. After our recommendation, you know, no time to really actually get this done and pressured everybody to get vote on it and say, if you don't do it, then it's gonna sit fallow for another 20 years. Or They use it right. So I just wanna say, like, that's, you know, I mean, I'm not trying to take any blame off of anybody else, but I'm just saying, you know, this is just not how. You know, we've been through, you look after, you know, and have it completely, you know, upended in the last second. The day
We have
before.
never been in this position before.
This is not the normal process?
This is not the normal.
So wait, there's absolutely no chance that Eric's office or Eric will say, let's delay, let's.
Eric has said
There's
he's.
no delay.
He's already published that
He's
he's already.
published.
Yeah.
Yes, he went ahead of himself. He was publishing that everything was fine, and then you go back and you say, oh, now I want affordable
I
housing.
think we
Yeah,
can
right.
take that offline, but that is the topic, that is the update on West Nile Yards.
Now, offline, I mean, the bottom line is tomorrow we will know,
Well, it's recorded.
I know that's important, but the bottom line is that tomorrow we will know who has
What?
made a decision on the community's behalf about all these subjects with very little input from us.
Agreed. Okay, I'm gonna move on, and I'm sorry to have to do these topics back to back, but, a brief NYCHA update. I know.
Hello.
What connects that? Oh,
Right, right.
they're related.
Well, how are they
Related, yeah.
So the brief update, one is that we have received two proposed dates on the town hall, which we are now working to confirm our internal availability. I'll just say them now, so is that okay? So that people can hold them, July 8th and July 9th. I
Who
know,
is those two?
we would be hosting,
Oh, okay.
but we are hoping, that we'll find the location. So those are the two dates that we really required or requested our council member and the, borough president will be available and that we go from there. So those are the dates that we were at.
July 9, Hell's Kitchen menu.
Yeah, Hell's Kitchen menus.
Yes, it does, it's BLP and Hell's Kitchen menu.
So something will move.
We will have to do something.
Yeah.
It's also the Fulton tenants meeting, but we,
Well, that would be good though.
if they agree,
That's a good
if
thing.
they agree. So, you know, if they, I think they need to agree that that would be good. So I just also, I know there's been, I don't know, disappointment, maybe as much as frustration about the delay and that we really have been trying and, I just, you know, will appreciate everyone's flexibility as we move forward.
What's that? Because we have this hearing, right? Then what's the next step? Sorry, those town hall. What's the next step after that? Where do we use the information we gain from that?
I think that's, I don't know if we have an understanding information we will, I don't think based off of that, we should have a lot of conversation.
But I will say in a separate process, and this connects to something else I just wanted to share that I suspect will come up. At HHS, if not at Clue, which is that, the Department of Buildings website now features a demolition, shows that there's been a demolition, petition.
Application.
For one of the buildings, 401 West 19th Street. Jesse has looked into this and talking with DOB and with NYCHA, and you wanna. Okay, well, that this is, that they recognize that HUD has to give approval, that this is them getting ready for that and putting in the paperwork, before they received the approval from HUD, but so that they have the process to begin to be put in place, so that when they do receive approval, they cannot move forward with demolition without HUD approval, but this is the applicant
But that,
taking those necessary
that
steps.
demolition does not require that.
It does not require ULURP, this is the as of right site, but it does require HUD approval.
And it does enable the related to go door to door and say, you have to move because we're gonna demolish the building, here's the application. It's a
No, it would,
strategy. Strategy.
well, and, right, absolutely, I mean, it is. You know, we've also, it is a strategy and we've heard from people, if I have to move, like, what's. When and who's the plan and what's happening, and so, you know, it's also just.
And when they move, could we give them now a piece of paper saying you're coming back, or what's?
Well, so
None of that
that
has
has
worked
been,
out.
that has been the discussions, I mean, we were on call today, it's connected tonight, so do you wanna say more on the petition, on the application?
No, I mean, I confirm that I should, you know, they're doing it, they don't wanna wait until HUD approval, they'll go through the process, and so they have put in applications, got an objection sheet, like any other large scale demolition would probably have, I've requested that an objection sheet, so I know what's actually on it. You know, and I highlighted, obviously, the DOB, that from our understanding, that they shouldn't be approving anything until, you know, if until when the.
Connected to this, we had a call today, Josephine, and, myself myself represented Community Board 4 together with PS 33, because they, while it's not this specific property, we know that they will be directly impacted. I'm sorry that Josephine wasn't able to join this evening. They are still under the, EIS period, so they were limited in what they could share, related, that is.
Oh, nitrogen related.
Yes,
Not
so,
P33,
yeah,
I
yes,
thought.
nitrogen related, we're still limited in what they can share, the represented were both the principal and superintendent, the he joined late, as well as parents, some of whom we've seen at some of the hearings, representing their concerns. And of course, and Eric and, Carl from his office, Eric coordinated the call. There were concerns, obviously, about immediate demolition and what that will mean just for the physical operations of the school, including potential vermin and air quality. There were also, though, discussions about that the school would like to see, if not a new building, that was raised, also significant improvements to their existing facility. And so there were clearly no commitments being made here, but it was a discussion. There was a question about timing, which, to go back to your comment about strategy, Joe, like clearly that's always in the mix. But it was clear that there is still numerous hurdles that have to be achieved before anything happens. That said, as Jesse reminded me earlier, just because the actual thing doesn't happen doesn't mean that there's not scaffolding and equipment and signage and other things that could be disruptive, upsetting, and like literally disruptive to the flow and what people's expectations are when they are in this space. But it was a good, it was tempered because of the comment period dynamic, but it was, I would say, a good first conversation.
The thing that worries me the most is that the people who try the building, when somebody comes and show them you're going to be moved, we should be trying to get a document together with related or with somebody saying, what does it say for them coming back?
Christine,
So,
this has been as part of our initial discussion
Right,
for over a year with Related.
yeah, but now we,
And no, Related and NYCHA, and
right,
they've committed to X, Y, or Z, and they've produced nothing. I just wanna say that if for PS 33, they can say certain things, but not much,
right.
because it's not the time yet, that's a strategy. But they can file on 19th Street to demolish, because that's a strategy. And the issue of a relocation agreement, which has been worked on by
Right.
legal aid representing hundreds of tenants,
Right.
is not coming to fruition because Related, I wanna say honestly, they don't want this to happen. They want to take strategically the most time possible to create the last minute run on this. So that is an ongoing issue that has been brought up in housing and in public meetings at Clue over and over. Just no matter what, whether it's temporary or
So
permanent,
what do we do about the people in those buildings?
we have to have,
What
we had a town hall meeting and asked our elected officials, what they're gonna do to deliver protections for people, because they are acting as if everything is just fine, and it's just not. That's just factual.
No, I understand. I'm still not seeing, you know, I live in the apartment, people show at the door, they say, hey, this is it, I am going to ask the question, saying, I'm
It's
going to
more.
ask the question saying, deal with that first. I'm going to ask the question saying, okay, but you know, you are kicking me out. So first, where do I go and when do I come back? And I think we should
We've
have,
had public hearings where people have stood up and said,
right,
they have been taken to see other apartments in other parts of the campus with no information, smaller apartments, things that they don't want, and I wanna say there's an element that you're not taking here. There is a level of anxiety,
no, I know,
especially in the senior building,
right,
where there's this indeterminate nature of what's happening, and it's being fomented by related and not just
and I
actions.
think we should be
And our
writing,
elected officials are counted, and they find it fine.
I think we should write, I don't know what you wanna do, but I think we should be really active in going to see these people and telling them what's going on, and also giving them a document which says it's protecting you. I know that we don't have necessarily the legal background to do that, or the legal basis, but I want to see all these people.
Well, what I would like to
Testify.
say, what I'd like to say is, one, I think we should hear from HOU, and I've said before, I think it's imperative that HOU present to the board at least what they are saying, and I'd like. I'm sorry, they're the entity which NYCHA has contracted together with Related
Your latest.
Okay,
they're getting paid by NYCHA.
right, okay, so HLU is
To support tenant outreach and to support tenant moving.
right, so we need
What do you
to
wanna
have
say
to
to
help.
Well, cause they're, I'm sorry, they're not, I don't care who is currently paying them, they were put together specifically by Related in order
Right,
to go and.
Joe, I understand your cynicism, maybe can we reach out to like the tenants association
Yeah.
presidents, and that's all, we don't have to go to Related for every.
Right.
If she wants out, you know, an outreach plan or something, it doesn't have to go through Related, it can go through the tenants association, it can go through some other organization that. Just so they're aware to allay their.
I mean, they are
fears, right?
tenants of NYCHA, so I think working with NYCHA, and I will just note that HOU works with NYCHA on all kinds of other projects, not just this one, and so they are an established group that does this work, of course, providing
and can
support. But I also wanna say more broadly that, and it's unusual tonight, but typically the tenant leaders are joining these meetings,
Yes.
so, you know, we're talking about them as we don't know them, and it's abstracted for a second. I also happen to know that TCBA is having a meeting tonight where NYCHA is on the topic, and both are there, and so I think if not for that, they might have been here and could contribute to this discussion. CCBA, right, the community.
Council
Association. But the other thing I just wanted to note is that what was discussed at HHS last month was the idea that we were gonna work to elevate what do we need to see and what do we want out of this process. And because of this demolition permit, we talked about this on a prep call that unfortunately you were not able to join today, but we talked about like the urgency really for us to define what it is we want has now reached we are now at that point where we need to be able to say what we want, whereas maybe in the months past, we were still collecting information, we were still hoping to hit certain milestones, we were hoping to have a town hall earlier, all of these things, but now that we're in the place where we are, that a permit has been filed, we really need to do this work of solidifying what our position is, not for what we don't want, but what we do want. And ensuring tenant rights and being clear on that we need a document well ahead, it needs to be socialized, it needs to have, I don't know, 180 days or whatever the right process is to be vetted and worked through. Like, that's what this board needs to do. And so I'm hopeful that that conversation can continue at HHS, but obviously involves so many other committees as well as it
I think
goes
it's
beyond
beyond
technical.
a special meeting in June, more than one meeting, because it's gonna take. In the discussion we had at our last meeting, it was very helpful, back and forth, people talked about it. But just getting past step one was very hard to see, so I think.
But let me ask you a question, I'm sorry, let me ask you a question, is that, for example, if I'm in my apartment and people come at the door and say, whatever, you are moving or whatever, do I have the right to say, no, I'm not moving?
Yes, you do, because
Okay,
until
so-
section 18 is approved, no one has the right to say.
So, for example, we should have the, what is it, the tenant association have a piece of paper written in big letters, saying if anybody comes, tell them
They have,
no.
they have actually talked
And to
about
me,
it, and
that's-
they've done that.
They have already done that?
In Elliott Chelsea, they have, yes.
Oh, but not in Fulton. Oh, okay, well, in Chelsea, so, all right. Just,
Candace, did you wanna add something?
Well, I was gonna just say with the tenants association, I heard from the tenants association that Related's not actually speaking to them.
Right.
And I don't know how we as community board can make sure that that can be, that connection can be made. And
Related.
Yeah, well, I was just say on that to respond that I have, because it's not, the issue is, manifold for sure, it's not just on the issues, I mean, the issue of the proposal and tenant relocation is obviously paramount. But there are also issues of both sides suggesting that there's been, threatening language, bullying, broken windows, like. An escalation of issues, and the fact that there's not open dialogue is deeply problematic, and I've raised it with the council member,
Well, blowing that smoke away, there was a meeting at Elliott Chelsea with related estimates of the council member with tenants, that the tenant association was not invited to. That happened in this month. So it's that kind of thing we have to deal with.
was not invited
It
to.
was not invited to. Correct. Like this is an ongoing issue here where there's a belief, if you just keep pushing this train ahead,
It's going to-
everyone is gonna just fold and be done. And whether you're in favor or not in favor of the current plan, the way in which it's happening is similar to like our stuff in DC. We just keep pushing it ahead. And I find it very distasteful from every angle, NYCHA, related and our elected officials not hearing that people are really not talking on purpose in order to obscure
Yeah.
what may happen.
But-
So I'd like to,
And that's not cynicism, that's just fact.
I'd kind of like to follow up. Joe, I mean, we are getting the sentiment from a lot of people that parties aren't talking, that the people who do talk get verbally abused for speaking their opinions, and they don't feel welcome at meetings and all that. And I think Related and I should have a role in that. But I think we as a community board may have a role to play in that maybe we invite HOU to HHS and say, what is your outreach plan for this plan to demolish these buildings and these elderly people that are gonna be pushed out? What are your talking points gonna be? And we write the talking points that then are distributed to the building, because the tenant association isn't always trusted through our buildings. NYCHA isn't trusted with it, but the building Related certainly isn't trusted in the buildings, but maybe we as a third party could engender some trust. And if we have a discussion at HHS about, HRU, what are you doing? Have a plan, show us your plan, and then we say, these are things we think should be in your plan, and then we take the lead.
I
on
would just
communication.
caution, I
Yeah.
like the suggestion, I think we have to. But,
Yeah.
and I think we have to be careful about our own capacity, meaning these meetings, issues, dynamics change so quickly.
Oh my God, yeah.
It is not our full-time jobs, we have very limited professional staff, and I think we need to, while the agencies that are involved have been deeply discredited, and it makes it very hard to rely on them. I think we need to figure out how do we, maybe by creating a partnership, like I don't know, some dynamic among them that can be more respected, but I
We
just.
have them on video saying things that are not true.
But I think that for us, our role, we could take a position on HOU's outreach program. We could make a statement, make a page letter.
Oh, we
then
can
they-
advise, we can push.
And
we can
then
do that.
but then the tenants association can take that letter and go out.
Yeah.
NYCHA can take our letter and go out. Like, we create a position on what outreach is necessary for these people who are going to be relocated.
Yeah,
To
and
Christine's point,
Right.
like, and we make a statement about it.
That
And that
is
is what.
well
we do.
that is well within, I think,
Because
our
every
role and expertise, our the role
Yeah,
that we play.
That's an,
And I would also just remind
That's
folks, and we saw this when we talked about the survey and the outreach prior to that. Having Greg just went to the most recent Fulton meeting, I've been to some. Not the same people don't come to every meeting, some information is old information, things change, some information may have been inaccurate, but. It's hard, we're talking about a lot of people and they're
thousands of
understanding.
people.
Yeah, which is why it's so important that it be clear, but I also just would note that. People are tuning in at different times, like this. I'm not trying to excuse it, I'm just trying to know that.
Well, the
it's-
other thing, maybe because the apartment buildings demolition permit is a file for specific buildings.
Yeah.
We hone in
Yeah.
on just that topic.
Yeah.
Let's not get caught up in the Fulton development and the demolition, but let's look at.
Let's go to
To Christine's point, if someone's living in a building and there is a DOB application for demolition of that building. Let's tackle that one building.
But
and-
Paul, sorry, it's too simplistic because
I'm trying to intentionally
No,
make
but
it.
HOU has gone through the senior building, knocked on doors and told people they should be packing. We found out at the DEIS hearings that they did the same thing in the summer of last year and people still have their things in boxes.
Right,
So that's the.
Joe, I've been at all these meetings, I understand that, I've
I work
heard
at
that.
DES meetings.
I have heard these complaints about HIU going into buildings, telling people to pack, and people being packed. I've heard these stories, I've been at those meetings. What I'm suggesting we as a board do is take a more proactive role in tackling the miscommunication for this building, that is, right now, there's a DOB application for demolition. Somebody's gonna find out about that and start freaking out.
They already have.
And so I think Christine's point of what are tenants' rights? Let's not rely on NYCHA, let's not rely on the tenant association. Let's have HOU come to us.
We rely upon legal aid who did the whole
Right,
legal aid.
I'm gonna interject
Yeah.
here, so the proposed demolition is supposed to be July, right, the end of July?
Well,
No,
it's not,
no,
because
But
they,
that's what's-
What are the tenants being told? As far as I know, they're being told the end of July.
That's
So what is the
correct.
fact? I
I
don't know
mean,
the fact.
I can't speak, I know that on the PS 33 meeting today, they said that like, they don't expect the application to be, the final FEIS. To be until the summer.
Okay, so I've heard the end of July, I don't think it's really gonna be the end of July, but that's what I've heard. And I think that I do like Paul's suggestion, and that's something, HOU coming to Housing Health and Human Services, and I've heard it from somewhere else, and I think it's actually a great idea. I do think, however, that what you are describing is a process that we can pass a letter at committee, but and then like 3 or 4 weeks later, it has to pass our full board before it can actually happen what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
To me, it's something needs to happen prior to the June. Like, am I missing something?
It would be the July meeting, which is the third meeting.
That's what I mean.
Good person, Joe.
That's what I mean. Sorry, that's what I'm mixing up. But what I'm thinking is, to Christine's point, to me, what makes the most sense, if I'm a tenant and I'm listening to what she says and I'm thinking about myself being a tenant there, what makes the most sense so that I know what's happening to me and settle my nerves a little bit is really some legal advice from somewhere, right? It's not really from HOU, and there's already some issues with some of the tenants in HOU, not really trusting what HOU is saying, and we know that there are some tenants who work for HOU that live there and have a position of being in favor of the proposed plan. I think what makes more sense is knowing what your legal rights are as a tenant, whether or not you need to move and when you need to.
But the
So, but I
point I
also-
was making is that I agree with you completely and with Paul, but legal aid. So the legal aid say you don't have to agree to move. We put that on a piece of
That we
paper.
can solicit
Right.
from legal aid, 'cause they were
We
part of the original
put that on a piece of paper
Right.
and we give it to the tenants organizer,
It doesn't be
etc.
organized.
And say, right, and then you send it out, and you put it under every door, so every door, people can look at that and
Yes,
say,
I
oh,
understood you,
good.
and I think that's a great idea. My point is that I think what you're describing right now makes more sense than us waiting and dealing and interacting
All
with
right,
HOU.
whatever, I mean,
But in my mind, it's Legal Aid Society and the TA president that need to collaborate, work together.
and we help them to do that.
And
We facilitate.
there's already been discussion, at least at the Elliott site,
Right.
where
But now we need to
they're
move.
knocking on doors of the seniors and having discussions
Right.
with them about what their rights
I
are.
understand, I think these
The
people.
tenant association going door to door.
Right.
To say, here's what your rights are, that you need.
I think these people must be petrified, and we don't know when they are coming, back.
We do need to kind of bring this to a
Right.
close, but I have one other topic on this subject, but Greg, you have something on this.
I just wanna note, at the Fulton tenants meeting, when Essence and Related presented. They didn't, there was at no point during that did Essence or Related, again, I'm not suggesting that they haven't done this. I'm not suggesting that it's writing that has indicated this, but I will just say that during the course of that presentation. They said 2 things verbally, one was on a slide where they said. There was no July date, it was summer 2025. Okay, so again, summer means the length of time. I'm not disputing that there are different interpretations or communications. Definitely put forward. Two, other piece was, they indicated, again, verbally, not written in this case, verbally, that there would be 90-day notice of relocation. Now,
Which is what they're required.
that's what they were gonna.
It's required.
So again, and maybe the case that they required to do that.
No, that's good
I'm
information.
just articulating what was communicated.
Yeah.
Now, again, I think it's important that we just keep in mind, just one thing. By virtue of our efforts, we could further be confusing some things. And I don't mean this from the perspective that we don't have the right orientation, which is to protect people.
Right.
But just be mindful of, if we start communicating things and sliding things under doors, it could further confuse some folks who are getting messages from HMU, my tenant association, the other tenant association, the person I know. So again, I think it seems to me as though, is the question at this point for us, how it is that we're trying to rectify how a community understands something, because if so, that's gonna take a lot of resource to be able to do. And I would argue in some cases, it's complicated because related has nothing to do except focus their time on how to upend whatever is being communicated. All due respect to our friends at Related, but the separate piece of this is to say, we still haven't yet necessarily put forward a position. So I think there are some aspects of
We have a
position.
position about rights.
Can I finish my statement?
Yeah.
Let me just finish. There are a number of different things that perhaps we can agree as a board through the committees to say our positions are X, Y, Z, A, B, C. They circle back certainly to the working group conversation that took place, the understanding from there, but at least to be able to frame this to say this is our start. Because people are waiting for that. And that is not to undercut the communications, the need for legal aids engagement. It's just to simply say, we have to be careful, I think, about jumping in and further muddling what I think tenants are communicating is already very muddled waters.
Okay, I wanna pivot to another topic, a connected topic, which we received a question about, which is at Chelsea Land Use last week. There was a decision in advance, it was noticed on the agenda to go into executive session, and the committee voted to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing this project. As I think everybody knows, there has been a lot of, this is a very difficult topic that has been very contentious among the committee. That there have been suggestions and accusations at times among members, that there's been a very prominent public presence at all of these meetings, which is appropriate, and we want to continue to encourage. And also the dynamics among the committee are something that have been top of mind to make sure that we are finding ways to ensure that the committee can speak candidly, collaboratively, and working together. And so there was a decision in advance of the committee meeting to, if there was a time allowed, to go into executive session. As I mentioned, we spoke to Jess, I didn't mention this part, we spoke to Jesse ahead of time to explore our options related to that. We felt comfortable, meaning executive session is not something that we go into very frequently, maybe if, and for many of us in recent memory. And no business was voted on, meaning there was no votes that came from this. The session, as I mentioned, was noted, open by vote, closed by vote. Members of the public were there and left, and there was no comments raised by them. There was a comment that was raised, and so we went back. Jesse did the work of connecting with, I'm sorry, the office of
The committee for open government.
and you can now, I'll shift it now to you to give that update.
We escort people out and
I'm sorry.
if you escort people out of the room.
Announced, we just announced we're going into executive session and people understood and said, okay, have a good night.
Yeah, so, Joe raised the concern, that, whether we had met the statutory, requirements to go into executive session. I contacted the Committee of Open Government to ask them about, give them an opinion. Their opinion was, and I'll just read this because it's easier, yes, no, it would be sounding on my mouth. You know, to summarize, says the motion to enter into executive session must identify the subject to be considered, for executive session with enough specificity for the public to determine that an allowable purpose for conducting executive session will be or was discussed. The motion in the agenda provided fails to identify that with specificity how the subject to be considered would be allowable purpose for conducting executive session. So what that means is we moved into executive session when we should have moved into executive session. There's not a particularly, silver bullet remedy to this. My looking into it really is about Greg, and making a report on this at include the next meeting to communicate to the folks, clarifying what Jessica just said, basically saying there was no action. Usually this is an issue if there's an action taken in closed door meeting, no action was taken. There never should be any action taken in closed doors, by the way. And I mean, for this board, at least I will say for this board. So Greg will give that report and clarify that at the clue to.
There was also the clarification.
I'm sorry. Sorry, everybody's talking on, sorry, no, go ahead, Greg.
Check that the board.
I mean, it's up, it's up to you guys, it's really up to you guys. I mean, the body that held the executive session was Clue. I think it should be reported there, and it should be clarified for the public what happened during the session. Clue. And there's no action taken, so there's nothing going to the full board that no one heard a vote from. So, there's no one's voting on something that has, that wasn't a public conversation about.
So what was missing? The statement that in executive session, we're discussing nature, we're going to executive session.
No, so executive session is listed out by the open meetings laws. There's a number of statutory requirements to get into executive session. I'll be honest with you, like the way it is written is not necessarily for a board such as ours. It is for a board that owns property and has a, an HR department and, you put something like a bid or a condo board or something like that. So in one of the statutory requirements is talking about real estate, sale and lease of real estate. Greg came to me and said, we would like to have this conversation, but it would be helpful to have it in a way where people felt able to have this conversation. I looked at the statutory regulations. I also asked my predecessor, who was the district manager before me, asked if this had ever happened before. He did say it did happen before at a land use committee meeting. And so I said, okay, there's precedent. And so, that was the advice I gave. But, obviously Committee on Open Government disagrees with the description of what we gave as the reason for it, not necessarily the content of the conversation, but
So I was
reason.
asking what should the description be?
I would love to tell you that these bodies would tell me the right thing to say. They're never gonna tell me the right thing to say. It's unless it needs to be a lot more specific. I think is the very clear way of saying it. And I think if we were again hypothetically discussing, a very specific, whether we're agreeing to, support or vote for or something along the lines of spending the subsidy of the body spending money here or there, then that should be clarified right in a clear tone. And so it wasn't. And so that's what we're at.
On behalf of Greg, I appreciate your counsel.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, the reason I raise this is because, I'm sorry, this is still not clear. There are, our bylaws reference the public meetings law through a link. So I went to the public meetings law and I looked, there's sections A through section 105, A through H. And nothing would meet that test, except for, in our circumstance, personnel. Or we're discussing a lease for a community board office. we have no interest in, the legal interest in the NYCHA ownership. So to have it, there was anything about NYCHA, if you look at that those sections, would not meet the test. So that's why I brought it to Jesse and
Yeah,
then,
that's fine.
yeah, and then to Greg, right? So I'm just concerned that we don't even think about, we can rely upon that going forward, because it's not a tool we have.
You're saying under no circumstance should we be a closed meeting.
You can have closed meetings if you're talking about personnel, if you're talking about a criminal proceeding, you're talking about a
Real
union,
estate.
or real estate held by the body.
Right. I
Us, the
mean,
board.
The committee didn't give this opinion,
What?
this opinion,
No.
the committee didn't give this.
Well, I didn't ask for the opinion before we went into executive.
No, I know,
No,
but
they
shouldn't they
didn't
have
say-
provided this?
They
in their-
didn't say there's.
No, yes, I mean, if you're going to read the whole thing.
If you read the whole section, it's.
No,
They'll, I didn't read the whole explanation, I'm just reading.
I guess we're just trying to figure out if we could update it. I don't
No,
know.
the answer is,
No,
the answer is no.
So we're not in this issue.
We'll acknowledge,
Okay.
the desire to acknowledge as chair that this was improper, also to explain what makes it proper. Is reasonable to do so, that's the law, we could probably communicate that, and I'll acknowledge that it was improper and an error. And also acknowledge that it was a conversation, no vote statement.
so then we're good.
But also know that this person did not respond saying there's no scenario in which executive.
Right,
session is
we're not really-
not- or
our
a
bylaws-
community board.
Our bylaws, that's
So-
executive session listed in the bylaws, there's a reason to go into executive session in the open meetings law. You're completely posted that, posted the executive session on our agenda in advance. You know, a motion was made, not by Greg, to go into executive session, so all the different points of it were accurate, you know, but the explanation as to why we're going into executive session was not specific enough.
Okay, ask a question, because I was there. And everything that I heard, like I had heard before, there was nothing really new, so I'm curious, like, what the concern was, like, why the executive session? What was the concern? Like, my assumption is there was some concern.
The purpose of the, from where I sat, the purpose of the executive session, again, improper, based on our understanding of the law.
To me, that doesn't matter, I'm just.
No, but I'm just saying, like, I just wanna read,
Just-
it's improper.
Process.
I think the subject heading was just having a conversation about kind of where we are with this project, we try to be able to do that with the committee members, was the desire statement, because we haven't been able to do that. And I thought there might be value in that, so when you say concern, I don't see it as concern, I just see it as, can we get a temperature check where we are in a room, we don't have to do that. That is improper. And I-
Oh, it was to allow people to be as honest as
Yeah.
possible about their experience.
Just to be able to talk to each other in a way that I didn't think we had had the opportunity to do so, again, not proper though. And that has to be in the public eye. And period, and so I accept that, so not a concern, just an opportunity, not the right to set it.
Yeah.
Way to go, Chair Chelsea Land use.
Okay, I wanna.
I know, such a rule breaker.
I wanna,
Go to jail.
before we go back to Jesse for the district report, I just wanna, maybe it's in your comments, sorry, but the July full board meeting, not June, but July is at Hotel Trades. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because typically for the last several years, we've done our July meeting on the High Line, and we will not be doing that this year. However, we will be doing our social at the High Line in that space, I believe, or an adjacent space, the day after. And so we'll still get to enjoy the beauty of the High Line, but for the purposes of our meeting, it's just been too disruptive to be in that space and try to conduct business.
Remember?
And so, anyway, that's the end of the trailer.
City of yes vote.
Yeah,
New York Day.
So upcoming full board agendas are in your Dropbox, and they are also, printed out here. Give me 1 second. And if, so please take a look. So we are trying to pull that all together. And then committee schedule for June is also printed and put out on the desk and should be in your Dropbox. Everybody's meeting at their normal time with the exception of the cannabis task force, which I believe might be meeting on the 17th, but we have to confirm that. Obviously, if you guys, there are a couple committees I know that don't necessarily have planned agendas yet. I know that's mind boggling for land use and don't include another one, but,
It's the far western rail yard coming soon.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
filming in the Hudson.
so, but please do obviously communicate with your, the appropriate staff member as to what you guys want to do. There's a lot of PDE on those sheets right now. Yes, Paul?
On the proposed agenda. On the proposed agenda for the meeting, for Clinton land use, JD and I talked today, the third item in this is a letter to elected officials calling them to task or not. I don't know whether we should table that, eliminate
So I
that.
talked to JD about this, I think honestly that both those letters could be sent back to committee. They don't shouldn't be tabled in my opinion.
Could go back to.
I could go back to committee, because I think we've gotten what we wanted at this point out of the
Yes,
situation.
we've got.
And so what I did add was obviously the actual letter, and then the other two, I think you can send.
Oh, you're putting that, under, house kitchen land use now, exactly.
Yeah, I thought there was, and unless I'm wrong, I apologize, you want to keep everything here, but there was an actual vote at the land use committee. I thought there was an actual vote at the land use.
Yes.
So,
We didn't vote.
Yes, there was a vote.
for what?
We didn't vote on this letter though. We voted on this letter just now. Oh, I'm sorry. So this comes out of exec.
Okay, so then we,
I'm sorry, I thought you were.
we'll switch it to exec, I thought there was a vote, that's why.
No.
I didn't understand what you were saying earlier.
No, the House Kitchen Land Use Committee did not vote on this letter.
Okay.
Executive
So that's
committee.
We voted on doing.
We voted on the letter.
Right.
Okay,
So,
well, we still voted on it tonight, so whether you do it or not.
Double vote.
and then the third thing is the affordable housing plan coming, in this month?
No, not in a full board,
Full.
but so we would commit it.
Committee.
Oh,
Yes, sorry.
okay.
I'm sorry, David.
Exactly, not a full board.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, everybody should read the material as closely as Paul just did, and with that, I'll take that motion to adjourn. Thank you, thank you to Erin for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know.